Alright, welcome back for another fly tying tutorial. Today we're going to be covering one of my all-time favorite authors when it comes to striper books. And this is Ray Bondorew. I hope I'm saying his name right, but if you haven't, check out Stripers and Streamers. Fantastic book. Hopefully you can find this in print, unlike Striper Moon, or find it somewhere online. But we're actually going to be tying a fairly simple fly called the Bondorew Bucktail. Very simple flatwing sort of style fly. But before we get into it, if you haven't checked out Stripers and Streamers, definitely try and pick it up or find something, find a version online. Fantastic book, especially when it comes to reading water and learning how to swing flies for striped bass. For the materials, we'll start off, we have some flashabou and some crystal flash. The pattern calls for some pearl crystal flash and some dark green flashabou. I just found some olive that I have, but you can use any sort of flash you'd like. But we're going to try and follow this fly to the exact directions this time. We have some bucktail. I have some white bucktail, which is just going to be used for the tail and the throat. We have some yellow bucktail, which will be used on the upper part of the collar near the end, and we have some blue bucktail as well. So some different colored bucktails. This is essentially like a herring imitation. Next up, we have some Squimpish hair. Now the fly calls for Fishair, which is a old school material, which I'm sure a lot of you know, but it was very popular before a lot of these synthetic materials came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. We're going to be using some Squimpish hair because I don't have any fish hair. It is a little bit softer than it, but it's pre-blended with some angel hair, and I think it's going to look nice. So we have some blue Squimpish hair, but if you have fish hair, that's what it calls for, but you can feel free to use any sort of synthetic material. We're just going to be using a small amount. Next up, we have some Flatwing Hackle. We have some white and yellow Hackle. Pretty simple, basic Flatwing Hackle. You can pick these up. They have the Ewing patches. There's all sorts of different brands, Keo. So just the idea of some nice thin Hackle. We have head cement and our trusty pair of Fiskers. Gotta love it. Flat wax 210 denier from Danville, my preferred go-to thread, as you know. Danville 210 denier flat wax nylon. Then there's the flat diamond braid, or essentially just Bill's body braid is my preferred. I don't have any Bill's body braid in silver, but that's my preferred body braid material. But really any sort of flat body braid works. We're using silver here. Some 3-aught Eagle Claw 254 hooks, the classic flatwing hook. You can check out my last flatwing video if you want a better explanation, but they don't sink very fast because they're pretty light wire, but they also are very durable and strong. Get our thread on here and work this towards the hook point. Work our thread back to the hook point here. Build up a little layer of thread so our material doesn't go anywhere. So now we're just going to start with some simple bucktail, some white bucktail, and this is going to give us a support for our flatwing hackle tail. Just grab like 20 or so pieces of bucktail. We'll take some of these shorter hairs out of there. And this fly with the 3-aught hook's probably going to be about 4.5, 5 inches, something like that. And we just want this to be support for the tail. So we're just going to trim that and tie this in right around the hook point. Securing that nice and tightly there. So now this will give us a nice little base for our hackle. Now this fly in particular is very interesting. It uses a single white piece of hackle and then a single yellow piece of hackle, but the way the white hackle is tied in, it's actually tied in upside down, which he notes it as the dull side up. What this is going to do is support the other feather, but it's also going to have these two feathers compressed against each other, kind of dancing around in the water. So we're actually going to tie this in upside down. And this is right about the length of the yellow one. We're going to make the yellow one slightly longer. In the photo, though, the white one is almost just as long, if not longer, than the yellow. But I personally want the yellow one to be a little bit longer. Now we want to make sure that we loosely tie this in to start and then wrap it down so that way we can get it sitting where we want. You can see this one's giving me a little issue, so I'm just gonna reposition. There we go. So you can kind of loosely wrap it, then tighten it to make sure you get it where you want it. So this feather is actually sitting, we have it sitting upside down. Now we can go ahead Now we're going to go ahead and tie our crystal flash in. So we're going to do 8 to 10 strands of crystal flash, it says. Normally I don't follow the directions to a T. I kind of like to do my own thing, but it is kind of fun from time to time. So what I'm going to do is take 4 pieces of this pearl crystal flash. I'm just going to fold it in half, and I'm going to loop it over, and that'll give us the 8 pieces that we're looking for. And I'm going to have this extend right around where the end of the feather is. I'll put this aside for some other fly later. Okay, now we can tie our yellow hackle, which we're going to go just slightly longer than this white hackle here. So I'll go ahead and take a single yellow hackle here. Something like that. Now what I'll do, same thing where I kind of loosely tie it and then tie it a little. Okay, so we kind of just loosely wrap that on, and then we can tighten it to make sure our feather's laying nice and flat here. Now we can add, it says 2 long strands of this dark green. I'm gonna go ahead and just take 2 pieces of this olive flashabou here and loop it and tie it right over. We'll end up with 4. Just kind of loop that, tie that like so, and trim it right around the end of the hackle here. All right, at this point we have our flatwing tail tied in. We have to do one more piece here for the tail, and then we're gonna wrap some body braid forward. So we're just gonna take some Squimpish hair here, and this is what we're using as our fish hair alternative, because I don't have any fish hair. It says like 20 strands or so. I'm just gonna take a pinch here and fold it in half and just tie that on like this. Now, one thing I want to do is I want to make sure this is almost the length of the hackle, so I'm actually going to lengthen this here. Something right about there. I don't mind if it's a little shorter than that yellow, so we kind of have a nice natural taper to our colors. We're just going to tie a pinch of that nice blended Squimpish hair in there. All right, and then we have our tail right there for our Bondorew Bucktail. So now the next step is we're going to do our body. The body of the fly is super simple. We're just going to take our pearl body braid here. Take our pearl body braid. We're going to tie this in, and this is kind of how you traditionally tie these flatwing baitfish flies, like the razzle dazzles or just simple flatwings. You can use, I'm going to use a little super glue here. You can obviously just use the head cement, but we want something here to kind of secure this body braid down. And then all we're going to do is just wrap this forward, neatly wrapping that body braid, and we're going to leave ourselves some room here at the front to tie this material in. Then all we're going to do is tie off this body braid here, wrap in front and back a couple times, and then I'll go ahead and just trim that nice and flush and tie on top. We're getting pretty close here to being done. Now we just got to finish it off with some collars. So for the wing, quote unquote, for the top collar, we're going to be using some yellow bucktail, and then we're going to be tying some darker bucktails on top, some darker blue bucktail. I'm going to start with the throat first, though. That's usually what I do. Sparseness is pretty important when it comes to tying these flies. We don't want too much material. We want a nice translucent effect in the water. So what we're going to do is take about 20 pieces of hair, so it says, and I'm going to taper this. It wants it to be about 2/3 of the length of the fly, is what it says. So somewhere about around here. Just tie that in nice and neat right on the belly. And we're not going for a bucktail deceiver here or anything like that. We're going for a flatwing Bondorew Bucktail. So again, sparseness is pretty key when it comes to these flies. Just a little bit. You can still see, you can actually see through the fly, right? Which is pretty important. So now we can go ahead and tie some yellow up top. I don't really have the best yellow bucktail, but we're going to use what I have here. I got to pick up a new patch. We really want to get specific. It says a dozen or more strands or so. How many whispers is that? Type that in the comments down below. All right. We're going to tie our yellow on here. I'm just going to kind of spread that around just a little bit on the sides and the tops. And now we can go ahead and tie our blue bucktail. It's kind of a nice, I don't know, sky blue, navy blue, if you will. So we'll go ahead and tie pretty much an equal amount. I might go a little heavier here. Maybe instead of a dozen, I'll go with 18. I'm feeling adventurous. But same sort of deal, we're going to take these shorter hairs and pull them out. And then we're going to tie this about equal length to the white bucktail and the yellow. And now to finish it off, we're just going to top it off with a little darker blue. And now we're just going to add about 10 or so, maybe a dozen pieces of this nice navy blue, if you will, this nice darker blue. Pull out those smaller hairs out of the way, and this is just kind of a nice dark topping. You could always go with something like peacock curl, but we're following this fly here. You could always add peacock curl on top of this for a nice dark topping. This is going to give us nice herring imitation here. We'll just neatly wrap that on there. And we're pretty much good to go here. You could always tie some eyes on if you'd like. We're going for the classic Ray Bondorew fly. So we're just going to throw a whip finish on here, put some head cement, and we'll give a couple of glamour shots, and then we'll see what it looks like in the swim tank. Again, super simple fly. These are the sorts of flies that I learned a lot when I was younger growing up and kind of honing my fly tying skills. Not too many crazy materials and stuff, just some nice simple techniques, but learning how to try and get everything to work together, all the materials and all that. All right, let's see what it looks like in the swim tank.